New York, big city of dreams. But lately, at the start of this season, been kind of a nightmare for both the Giants and the Cowboys as we get set for this NFC East showdown. And while the Giants may feel better about themselves heading into this one, we'll tell you why historically the good folks from DFW should be very, very excited about their trends going into this game tonight. It's all ahead on this little endeavor we like to call the Pregame Powerup. Well, we are back at MetLife for Thursday Night Football to kick off Week 4 of the NFL season. Now, you might remember the Jets destroyed the Patriots here last week. We'll see if the team they share that home with can do the same tonight, though. It will be a much tougher task as the hungry Cowboys come to town. And they are hungry to not get beaten to shreds, which is what happens to them the last two games. Glad you're with us for the Pregame Power Up here on DraftKings Network. Trey Wingo here with Claudia Belofatto as well. Emerson Lotzi will join us shortly from MetLife. But interesting to note what's happened going into this game, Claudia. The line started big for the Cowboys, and it's been going the other way.
Yeah, and it's never too surprising when it opens on a key number, which it did with Dallas opening as a 7-point favorite. What is surprising, though, is that it got as low as 4.5. Some buyback up to 5.5, now down to 5. But even more surprising than that is the fact that almost 80% of the handle and the bets are coming in on the Cowboys, yet the line is moving in favor of the Giants. So that's what we call a fishy line right there.
Okay, so what does that say to you?
Well, usually we'd call it reverse line movement if the sharps were on one side and that's the handle and the bets were on another. But that's not the case. They're both on one side, yet the books are saying, nope, we're going to move this line towards the Giants. So maybe bookmakers have a better feel about this Giant squad. And I guess it's tough looking at both teams at 1 and 2. The Cowboys underperforming, the Giants to some degree overperforming. Daniel Jones looking a little bit more like 2022 Danny Dimes that they paid. So I think it's just a tough game overall. And there's really no explanation as to what that is. You'd have to ask a bookmaker.
Well, again, I think the bettors, like everyone else, confused about what's going on so far in the early start to this season for both of these teams. And let's take a look now at what I'm talking about here as we delve into this further, because the Cowboys, it's got to be good for them that they have gotten away from home, because that has been the last place they want to be. Now, the Dallas Cowboys did score 19 unanswered points in the fourth quarter last week against the Ravens, but it was still a little too little, a little too late. They lost 28-25, and they are now 1-2 on the season. Dallas, by the way, was so dominant last season at home. They've lost consecutive home games in the same regular season for the first time since 2020. But if there's any team to get right against for Dallas, it would be this Giants team. Why do I ask? Because one Rain Dakota Prescott is under center at quarterback. Is that significant? The trends say very much so. Dak enters tonight with a 12-game winning streak against the Giants dating back to 2017, which is a fancy way of saying he hasn't lost to the Giants as a starting quarterback for Dallas since his rookie year of 2016 when they went 0-2. And Dallas has scored 20 or more points in 11 of those last 12 starts against the Giants. The Giants, in fact, are Dak's most profitable opponent against the spread in his entire career. But what does all of this really mean when we look at this Dallas Cowboys team and the way they've played the last 2 weeks? For more on that and many other things that I'm sure will make some sense on some level, we go out to MetLife where we find our own Emerson Lotzi. Emerson, take it away, my friend.
Hey, what's going on, Trey? Let me tell you what, floating around these tailgates here for the past few hours, at least with Dallas fans, which there are a ton of Cowboys fans here, I wouldn't say the vibes are electric. They're not super low. They're still on the bandwagon, even though Dak Prescott suggested after the latest loss to jump off. And then he also decided to call out his teammates on their lack of professionalism, which it is professional football, so you need to be professional. And those same teammates he called out decided to step up and take accountability for all these slow starts that they've been having.
Everyone's nodding their head like, yeah, we all agree. But at the same time, like, it's not equaling us out there on the field. Too prideful to I feel like as a competitor, like at some point you got to be prideful enough to say, hey, like, I'm not going to allow this to happen to me. Like, I just feel like some people are just allowing them to keep getting smacked in the face. Like, when are you going to stand up? Like,
when your teammates talk about accountability and wanting to hold each other accountable, what does that exactly mean inside the context of the locker room and throughout practice?
I think the biggest thing is when you hold somebody accountable, you also got to be willing to be held accountable. Simple as that.
There's always some little things that you try to just kind of remind guys of details or remind yourself even of details, and you just want to keep rolling. You don't want to start off slow like we did. So I think I can be better in trying to get that initial drive going a little bit better.
And shout out to Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, who also makes personnel decisions. It's good to see him taking blame, because he was asked the other day who deserves blame for this, and he said, I do. And so we're going to navigate around and do our best to catch up with many of these Giants and Cowboys fans coming up later in this edition of Pregame Power Up. Many of them very generous with their tubed meats, including my guy, Big Sausage Man Dan back there. He's been making these sausages for 20 years. Also, another gentleman has already invited me to his funeral. I look forward to introducing you to the wonderful people out here at this tailgate outside MetLife Stadium coming up in this show.
Emerson, thanks. Big Sausage Man Dan, there are worse nicknames you could have if we're going to be honest about it, and we'll check back with you a little later on in the show. Now, the problem for the Cowboys has been don't fall massively behind. Take a look at this. The Cowboys have been playing from behind a lot this season, 5th most time trailing in the NFL, and all of Dak's passing touchdowns and both his interceptions have come on snaps with Dallas trailing. A complete 180 from last season, where they spent the 4th least time trailing. In fact, Claudia, in each of the last 2 games, the Dallas Cowboys have not had the lead. And they had the exact opposite take place in Week 1 when they were on the road and played very well in Cleveland. Then they go back home to AT&T Stadium, where last season they set the second most home winning streak franchise in franchise history, and they can't get out of their own way at home. So it's really been a weird start for Dallas.
That must be some sort of mental block for them, too, with how dominant they were at home. Now your 2 losses are at home, and I think the biggest issue is they can't rely on any one facet of the game. They can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. The passing game's not looking good. Really, no part of this defense. They're ranked on PFF as one of the worst teams with the Washington Commanders. Shout out, they got the win. But they need at least something to go right. This might be a bounce back spot, but so far, nothing's working on all cylinders.
Here's a really interesting thing about this game historically for the Dallas Cowboys. This is the first time in the history of this franchise they have been on the road on short rest. In other words, play a game at home, go on the road, play on Thursday night. Every other team in the NFL has done this at least 6 times. The Cowboys have been in this league since 1960. This is the first time ever that they will be on the road in a short week. We'll see how all that breaks out. All right, for more on this, let's bring in our former NFL offensive lineman who played 11 years in the league, including a couple of seasons with these New York Football Giants. And that, of course, is the big man from TCU himself, Marshall Newhouse. Marshall, when you look at this Cowboys team, they can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. You have Dak Prescott saying, jump off if you want, Cowboys fans, and then not attending or answering any questions from the media. How much of a mess do you see this team right now?
Listen, it's not a mess, but it's not the standard that they have portrayed to us that the Cowboys are. They always have some excuse as to, well, we got to get this figured out. We got to get that figured out. Oh, you're missing the context. You're missing the reasons why. Well, the reasons are multiple, and they're on offense and they're on defense and potentially in their personnel department. And so if you're a Cowboys fan, I get the doom and gloom nature. You're hearing everybody kind of dump on them this week leading up to this game. If they want to win, they have got to put themselves in the corner and turn to a team that they're not used to being, which is a team that nobody believes in, because ultimately people have lost their faith in the Cowboys based on what we've seen on the field. We're going to talk about their defense. We're going to talk about the offensive line. We're going to talk about Dak Prescott, maybe not necessarily living up to his contract, but they're all reasons, all encompassing on why the Cowboys are a little bit in disarray right now.
It's so true, Marshall. They're used to being America's team. They're not used to really having people doubt them, which I don't think you can say the same about this Giant squad as of late. Specifically, after they paid Daniel Jones, it seemed like his production just fell off. Of course, injuries had a huge part in that. But so far, this small sample size, he's gone back-to-back games with 2 passing touchdowns, no giveaways, 100-plus passer rating in both of those. Can we expect to see more of this? Should we be? And really, where's the vibe and your confidence in this Giant squad right now?
Yeah, you mentioned that he's had 2 straight weeks of just competent quarterbacking, which is such a bizarre thing to say about Daniel Jones. But give him credit. He's had 2 games in a row with 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. But they're going to have to lean on this run game. People are saying it. Devin Singletary is going to have to I think he's going to get 25, maybe 30 carries in this game if they're smart. Usually on these short rest weeks, on these Thursday night games, everything gets parsed down. You get simplified. You get less time on the field. So you want guys to be able to play fast, play fresh. And so, the Giants have had a lot of success running, gap schemes, pin and pull schemes. Devin Singletary has been getting hit and contacted behind the line of scrimmage more than almost any running back in the league, and yet he's averaging over 6 yards after contact. And so he's really been saving this offensive unit, but the offensive line is starting to block a little bit more. They're starting to fire off the ball, lean on guys a little more. The Cleveland game was a really, really good example of how they clinched the game, and Devin Singletary with a great smart play to slide to really salt the game away. And so, Daniel Jones is going to have to rely, hopefully, with the play callers on this offensive line and then getting in the right place. Sometimes they will call a play. David will call a play, and he's going to have to use his brain. He's a dude guy. He can do it. He's very capable to get in the best play. Maybe not the best play of all time, but a better than play than they're in at the moment. And so those kind of things, those normal operational things that we're used to seeing from the elite quarterbacks, Daniel Jones is going to have to do in primetime, where he is 1-12 in his career. Just not a great sample.
Well, not only that, 0-5 in his career on Thursday nights. The Giants have lost their last 8 Thursday night games. But let's get away from the quarterbacks for a second, because everyone likes the quarterback. But as my friend Teddy Bruschi once said, if you stop watching the ball, you'll learn something about football, okay? And here's what we know. If the Giants are going to need to rely on Devin Singletary to win this game, they're playing the right team. When I say Dallas has been woeful against the rush, they've been awful. To put it in perspective, their rush differential in terms of how many yards they've run for as opposed to how many yards they've rushed for is minus 336. So they're giving up tons of yards on the ground, and they can't get the offensive game on the ground going. So with that in mind, Emerson, how much do they attack that?
I think the Giants will attack that by just, again, using Devin Singletary in multiple looks, bringing in maybe a 6th offensive lineman. Their tight end room's a little short, but I think they're going to have to get some beef on the field. I'm a big fan of extra beef. We're going to have to get some on the field and push the Cowboys around because, as you stated, they're, dead last in EPA, run success rate. I mean, so many different categories. There's just too many statistics to enumerate how abysmal this defense has been. And this is something that's not going to sit right with them. They've given up more rushing yards in a 3-game stretch than in franchise history since 1963. I mean, when we're talking about stats that you're setting precedent over that are over 50 years old, I mean, you're thinking about a whole world of bad. And so I believe the Cowboys defense is going to have some pride about coming out and doing something about that. But again, there's pride, and then there's actual execution on the field. And they have yet to show us that they're prepared to do what's necessary to stop teams from running on them.
Yeah, and Micah Parsons was very vocal about the defense getting slapped in the face. He has never gone 3 games straight without a sack, so I assume he'll step up big tonight. And by the way, you mentioned Devin Singletary. 14.5 attempts is the line set tonight. Sounds like you like the over there.
I do like the over. They're going to get the ball in his hands in multiple ways. They'll run screens for him. They'll get him on the edge because he is very good at that. But, I would take the over there. It feels like that's the type of game that they're preparing to do on a short week.
All right, Marshall, thanks very much. We got extra beef with Marshall. We got Big Dan Sausage Man. I'm sensing a theme on this show. We'll check back with you a little bit later. Coming up next, CeeDee's been one of the NFL's top receivers since coming into the league in 2020, but the connection hasn't been there, and Malik Neighbors has been tearing it up. We'll talk about it.
Our national nightmare is over for CeeDee Lamb with a brand new, shiny deal.
It's still surreal to me.
The New York Giants select Malik Neighbors.
I already see what the league all about. Now I can go handle my business and go score touchdowns.
I believe, I'm just a dog. When I'm out there on the field, I just want to be a dog.
I'm ready. We go win ball games.
Well, CD may want to win ball games, but the Cowboys haven't won enough ball games yet. Let's just be honest about it. Both CeeDee Lamb and Malik Neighbors looking to get off tonight and have absolutely great games. They've been at the top of their games in their profession since they both came into the league. And Dak's most reliable receiver, though, has the fewest receptions through the first 3 games in 3 weeks of his seasons in his career. While the volume has been there and down for Lamb, it's been through the roof for Malik Neighbors. I mean, we are talking historically. Look at these numbers for the things that he's been able to do. Neighbors leads the NFL in targets this season. He's the first player in NFL history. League's been around for a while, people, to have these numbers through his first 3 games. 20-plus receptions, 3 receiving touchdowns. The only Giants player to account for at least 1/3 of the team's receiving yards. Over half a full season, or over a full season since 1970, was Odell Beckham Jr. You might remember him. He had a really great catch against the Cowboys in a primetime game a few years ago. So that's what we're talking about here. Everyone has been impressed by what we're seeing from Malik Neighbors, including one of the guys he's going up against tonight.
I think Malik Neighbors is a dog. I was trying to draft him to my fantasy team, too. Someone took him right before my pick. I think he's another guy. He's legit. I'm excited to play against him. I was watching his training camp highlights and things that he was doing, so to go out there and see what he does in person, that's going to be exciting.
I have a lot of confidence in him, so I think we target him a fair amount. But I think he's earned that. He's earned the right to have those opportunities. And look, one game I don't know what he's had, 30 the past 2 weeks, I think. But there'll be adjustments throughout a game where things are happening, and everybody's going to have to be dialed in. But his mindset, he's a competitive young man that he's just a football player. So glad we got him.
Yeah, you should be glad you have him. As for CeeDee Lamb, the matchup might be a great place for him to finally bust out tonight. Lamb averages about 6.5 receptions and just over 90 receiving yards per game in 8 career games against the Giants with 3 touchdowns. He's gone over his receiving yard prop in 4 straight games against New York. Lamb's only game with fewer than 50 receiving yards against the Giants was Week 17, 2020, when the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, was starting for the Dallas Cowboys. And when you look at the matchup tonight specifically, suddenly we find out that the Giants are going to be without their 2 top corners. Yeah. For all the issues the Cowboys have had, it might be time to just force-feed CeeDee Lamb. Yeah,
Drew Phillips, Adoree Jackson officially out, and I think this number reflects that, because you talked about how dominant he has been against this squad, but every season is a new season, yet his line is set at 81.5 receiving yards, which is the highest pregame that he has ever had facing this squad. I think the biggest issue for them, I was surprised to see this, Dak leading in passing yards, but he also has the 2nd most checkdowns. They haven't really had anything explosive. Those two, Prescott and Lamb, have connected on just 3 passes of 10-plus air yards. We know that explosiveness is there, and this is an opportunity against a beat-up secondary where we can finally see that.
Well, I mean, you go back to that crazy game last season against the Detroit Lions where they hooked up on that 90-plus yard touchdown pass. Like, we just haven't seen that kind of stuff. And you mentioned the yardage for Dak last week. The problem was it was in all catch-up mode. When they get behind by 28-10 or whatever it was against the Ravens, suddenly you have to chuck whatever the game plan was out the window and just start finding ways to make things. Like, it sounds great when you say, oh, Dak leads the league in passing yards. But, like, there's statistics and then there's fantasy stats, and the real stats are the bigger issue. The real thing, though, has absolutely been Malik Neighbors and the way he's come on as a rookie sensation.
Yeah, and that Diggs matchup is going to be tough for sure, but I think what he's been able to do, not only leading in targets for the league, but the catchable targets, too, have been there. So that's credit to Daniel Jones, too. Maybe he did, people just need a top receiver, which he certainly has now, not them having to just lean on the run. And also huge for CeeDee, of course, will be them getting the ground game going for Dallas. I mentioned some of the splits at the top of this show, but let's talk about where this money is coming in right now. 79% of the handle on Dallas to cover, 80% of the handle on Dallas money line. The over is seeing some money. 99% of the bets on Robinson over on receiving yards, and 99% of the handle. That is crazy, but keep in mind, despite all of these numbers, all of this money, the line is moving the other way. For more on where the money is coming in on the DraftKings Sportsbook tonight, we bring in our anonymous informant representing the Sportsbook, Captain Book.
It's Thursday night, and an NFC East battle kicks off Week 4 of the NFL. VIPs nationwide continue to back Jerry's boys, but our numbers have moved against that action. Dallas opened near a touchdown favorite. Now the number's down to 5. Why? Daniel Jones has a career record of 0-5 in Thursday game, but he's 3-0 ATS versus NFC East opponents in that span. So sharps are siding with New York tonight, and the book has no beef with that. Sure, the Cowboys have outscored the Giants by 60 in their last 3 trips to Jersey, but Dan Quinn coached that Dallas D. He's now in Washington, and his new team is 2-1. Meanwhile, New York and Dallas sit at 1-2. Cowboy backers are hoping for big nights from Dak Daddy and CeeDee Lamb chops, while the New York faithful believe next-door neighbors and Denny Dimes will cash their tickets in style. All that TD action correlates with this game going over the total, but the book won't be complaining if tonight's game gets sloppy and stays under 45 points. Damn, Daniel, let's go!
Is Captain Book feeling himself a little bit?
Did he say Daddy?
He did say Dak.
And
Look,
CeeDee Lamb chops?
we started, well, okay, that makes sense.
It's the
Big
beef.
Danny sausage, right? Marshall Newhouse likes
It's
more
the beef show.
And CeeDee Lamb chops. So
Man.
I appreciate Captain Book buying in before we even knew what we were buying into.
I guess so.
That's
Consistency
impressive.
on Pregame Powerup.
That's impressive.
That's good.
All right, let's try and see if we can get this thing back on track. And for more, let's bring in former NFL wide receiver and current analyst for VSiN, Mike Pritchard. Mike, let's start first and foremost with what you've seen out of this rookie, Malik Nabers. I mean, you know what it's like to play in this league. To see the things he's doing historically has just been remarkable.
Yeah, it really has, Trey. Malik Nabers is an incredible player. What I love about their offense and what they're doing right now by design is they're complementing Malik. In other words, with formations and personnel movement, they're really shifting him around the line of scrimmage and creating some matchups for him out there on the field as well. And that's making it easier for Daniel Jones to find him. You mentioned the targets, 37 targets already. The guy's a playmaker. He calls himself a dog. Anytime you see players like this, you want to feed them the rock.
Yeah, now leading in targets, Malik Nabers is, which was a spot that CeeDee Lamb found himself in pretty much the whole season, certainly to end it. Facing a little bit of a struggle, I think, overall for this Dallas offense, but specifically that connection between him and Dak. What do you make of that, and how much longer can we expect to see that, do you think? And how much do you think the offseason had to play in that?
A lot, Claudia. I was just about to mention that. I think no off-season workouts, really, no training camps or mini camps, no training camp for sure with the holdout. So you're relying on continuity, you're relying on that relationship over time. But each and every year is a snowflake, right? It's a different season. Even though they're running the same scheme and the same offense, you still have to develop timing. You still have to develop comfort. You still have to develop rhythm out there, and they don't have that. They're not executing the way that they should be at this point, especially being veterans. And that's what you're hearing from the fellas, right? The players, they're talking about holding each other accountable. We're vets out here. We're supposed to be able to do that. We're supposed to be able to execute. But that's just signs right there that they're uneasy in that locker room with the fact that they're not able to execute at a high level.
Mike Pritchard with us, former NFL wide receiver, analyst for VSiN. Okay, Mike, let's talk about Dak here for a second. He has struggled against the blitz this year. No surprise when you realize you don't have a running game. They're going to bring everything at you, okay? So he's going to deal with that until the Cowboys can find any consistency in the running game. But the Giants have been really good this year, Mike, at getting pressure at opposing quarterbacks.
Absolutely, Trey. 14 sacks. I mean, tied for second in the league right now with the two bookends running that 3-4 defense. And they're really come off the edge. They're really aggressive. The thing about Dallas is that they've skewed their identity. Like their pass run ratio, they're 70-30 right now, which is incredible. Obviously, you can't run the football, so you got to rely on Dak and throwing the rock. But when all those plays show up on tape, to a defense, now we know what to do. Now we can really dissect situational football. Now we can really take you apart in terms of what you're trying to do throwing the football. If you're trying to get it to CeeDee Lamb, we can take away those tendencies. It's really making things difficult for Dallas to execute. Speaking the truth here, because I played in a run and shoot offense my first few years in Atlanta. When teams understand what you're trying to do throwing the ball, it gets really, really difficult out there. And I think that's what Dallas is going through right now.
Yeah, and White handicaps them so much, not by running the ball. They're going to be facing a tough pass rush tonight. Giants ranking top 5, which leads me to ask you this question. The line has moved in the Giants' favor, but all of the money is in on Dallas. All of the bets are in on Dallas. Which way do you lean here?
Well, Claudia, I don't think there's respect for the Giants at this point. But this year has been unlike any other year when it comes to heavy favorites, whether it's road or at home, right? In terms of the Cowboys, I consider them, when they were a touchdown favorite, as a heavy favorite. You're talking about a short week. At the most, they did walkthroughs, and Dallas is struggling executing on offense. Defensively, they're dead last in terms of red zone efficiency, allowing touchdowns. So any type of offense between the 20s, you're talking about scoring opportunities there for the Giants. I like the points. It's not that sexy, because it is the Giants. I thought the Giants could have a miserable season. But I think in the locker room, where the difference is right now for the Giants is that they feel like this division is wide open. And Daboll's communicating that to the fellas in that locker room. So they have some belief going on early on in the year. So I like the points in that situation.
Well, Mike, it's very possible still that the Giants could have a miserable season. Let's that is no way, shape, or form.
Right. Absolutely.
Been put to
Absolutely.
bed. But when you look at this game tonight, especially with the idea that the top 2 corners for the Giants are out, and the Cowboys have got to find a way to get CeeDee going. Over/under is at 45. Where do you stand on that number?
I want to go over, I really do, but the better in me says and suggests to me that it's going to go under because it's a short week. And again, I talked about Dallas not being able to execute. Maybe they rev it up this week or tonight against the Giants because of the lack of defensive backs out there. But I think what nobody's talking about is the offensive line, really, and Dak Prescott not feeling that comfortable. Zim, the new defensive coordinator, too, they got to get that side of the ball right. But this is the type of game where it looks and feels sloppy. They are so familiar with each other as well as far as players. So I expect this one to go under.
One name that we're not super used to hearing a ton of love about is Wan'Dale Robinson. Right now, second on the team in targets. He's getting a ton of love in terms of his yards, people loving him for touchdown. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Claudia, I think when it comes to people kind of breaking out and certainly trying to get in situations where they can get the ball and maybe be that second option or maybe be just not that premium player yet, then that's a surprise, right? And that's what I look for, too, from a betting standpoint. I look from those players, not the number 1, maybe even not the number 2 option, but the number 3 option that could really come home and make that bet come home for me as well.
All right, so let's go one more time on the Cowboys side here because, like we said, they have been terrible rushing the ball, 73.5 yards per game. That's 30th in the NFL. Dak and Zeke came into this league the same time in 2016. Zeke was the first rounder. Dak was the 4th rounder. Zeke is back. How critical is it for him to get going tonight to take some of that pressure off Dak that he's going to be facing with that Giants pass rush, as you said, 14 sacks on the season?
Right, it's essential, Trey, but I don't know if they can get it going, though, right? I mean, the offensive line, it's a revamped offensive line right there, and that's the problem, too, because there is some coordination with running the football, and we just haven't seen that yet. And I think when we're talking about Zeke, we're living in the past on his ability currently with the Cowboys.
Mike Pritchard out there in Vegas, we appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the game.
All right, take care. Thank you very much. Take care.
Coming up, we'll go back to MetLife and check in with Emerson Latzia as he braves the elements. I guess you could say that. There will be hot dogs involved.
There's going to be meat, I can promise you that.
Giants
that's happening. Well, we also got Next Gen Cats. What are we doing here?
Oh.
They like CD, they like Devin, first touchdown. Jake Ferguson is interesting.
Oh, we got some life here from the cat.
What do we got?
Oh.
Is the cat going for the LSU Bengal? What do we got here? Where's she at?
Oh, okay.
Neighbors! The cat goes for the Bengal! It all makes sense in our strange world.
Smart cat. Smart cat.
Well, each of the Giants' last 2 wins over Dallas came right here at MetLife Stadium. However, Daniel Jones has never won a game that wasn't on a Sunday, and the team overall has lost 8 straight games on Thursdays, dating back to 2016. We continue here in the pregame power-up. You could make the case that the Giants should have just said no when they looked at the schedule and said potentially a Thursday night game. But let's go back out to MetLife with a man who's never experienced the word no in his life, including his current wardrobe, Emerson Latzia.
Hey, guys. Good to have you here again. Yeah, it's been a fun time out here today. We have been well fed. Everyone's asking me why I'm wearing this ginormous foam cowboy hat, and it's because our producer Samir behind the camera has this weird thing about large foam cowboy hats. But Cowboy fans were really connected to me wearing this. Giants fans are like, "Are you a Cowboys fan?" And I said, "No, it's just a giant hat." But turns out these two teams, these two fans of these two teams, fierce rivals, they can get along after all. And what's kind of crazy, it may be the Eagles that actually brings them together. Okay, how nervous are we tonight playing the Giants as a Cowboys fan?
Not very.
Why is that?
I mean, it's the Giants.
I'm seeing a lot of Cowboys fans around here. Describe the relationship to me between Cowboys fans and Giants fans.
I don't really think about them, you know. They haven't won anything in like 30 years, so to me they're just irrelevant, you know.
Can you say anything nice about Cowboys fans? I'm challenging you right now. Do it.
The nicest thing I could say about them is that they're just delusional.
What could you say about Giants fans? Something nice. Yeah, that's right. Start letting it cook over here.
I like them better than Eagles fans.
That's what I'm getting a lot of out here.
They're much nicer.
Yeah.
I can tolerate them.
Okay. I had the exact same answer.
Wow. So look at you guys on the same page. So it takes Eagles fans being so terrible to bring Giants fans and Cowboys fans together?
Absolutely.
Enemy, my enemy is my friend.
Guys, hug it out. Hug it out. Come on. That's right. That's family right there, baby. If I asked you to say something nice about Giants fans, could you do it?
Yes, they're fine.
So what is it about Giants fans that you like?
They take loss well. They take
Do they take losses better than Cowboys fans?
You know what? I've been to this stadium 5 years in a row to watch, and 5 years in a row we've won, so I don't know how Cowboys fans take it.
The low-key dig, twist the knife. What if your wife was a Dallas fan? How would you handle that situation?
I wouldn't be married.
I love that about you.
I don't care how sweet she is.
Yeah, I'd like to give Jimmy there in the red shirt a shout-out. He was actually the one who invited me to his funeral. We don't know when that's going to be at this time, but he plans on wearing a Giants jersey. And his casket will be covered in Giants blue. There's a whole another section behind the camera here where there is a Cowboys fan. He's here with his wife who's wearing a Cowboys shirt, but he had to politely ask her to wear that because she is a Jets fan. And by the way, the two dudes who I asked to hug it out, father-son duo. Dad's a Giants fan. Son's a Dallas fan. And the father feels like he has failed his son and his entire family, but his son forgives him. These people are having a very good time out here, Trey, and we miss you.
Well, and we miss you, and I think we've just explained the complexities between a father and son relationship perfectly in what we just saw there. Emerson, never change, my friend. Don't you dare think about changing. However,
well, if that's the case, then I'll take another bite of this 20-year recipe sausage. That again, Sausage Dan, who's good friends with the dude who invited me to his funeral. So Dan will be at Jimmy's funeral with me eating sausage.
Well, you might be there sooner because I thought you were going to say it was a 20-year-old sausage. I'm glad it's just a 20-year-old recipe, all right? Emerson Latzia, enjoy that meat stick, my friend. And let's take a look at something that should change, hopefully for the Giants, would be Daniel Jones, because this has not been his jam in any way, shape, or form. Since 2003, or 2023, anyway, Jones is 1-13 straight up, 7%. That's the mark of the lowest win percentage among all quarterbacks with a minimum of 5 starts. And after the 1 p.m. window, he is 5-21 straight up, 11-15 against the spread. He has lost 6 straight against the spread. And as we said, Claudia has yet to win on Thursday though he has kept it close, covering in 3 of the 5 games.
To sum it up, Trey, it hasn't been good.
Not great, Bob.
Or
Not
this
great.
Giants team as a whole. So if you're a Giants fan, just cover your eyes for this first in trend, okay? We just talked about the Daniel Jones numbers, but look at these in terms of games, the dominance for the Cowboys against the Giants. 13-1. That means 1 win for the Giants in the last 14 games, 6 straight. So that woman was correct. Cowboys fans don't really know losses to this Giants squad. 9-1 in the last 10 primetime games. And just take a look at this point differential, plus 72. To sum it up, that is not good. Let's send it out to our friends at the Underdog podcast for some more trends.
We're the Underdogs. I'm Jordan Brenner. That's Peter Keating. And Peter, as we look ahead to this Giants-Cowboys game, you have a team playing absolutely terribly in the Cowboys the past 2 games. But oddly, if you look at statistical evidence over time, that doesn't rule them out here. So if you look at favorites in a game, and the Cowboys are favored by 4.5, who come in on at least a 2-game losing streak, the Cowboys have lost 2 in a row, with 4 days off between games, like they have here, those teams are 28, 14, and 2 against the spread, according to Action Labs, covering by an average of 4.2 points per game. That group includes last year's 63-21 thrashing of the Raiders by the Chargers. So, Peter, is history convincing you to back the Cowboys minus 4.5 here?
Well, it's convincing me that something's going on with the short week where teams playing badly don't have it count against them. Now, let's be clear about just a couple of things. The Cowboys have been outscored 83-29 in the first half of their past 3 home games, okay? They're giving up 5-point yards a rush. This historical trend means that the Cowboys' talent advantage is probably worth something against the Giants in a short week. So, sure, it's worth trusting history, but that means you expect the Giants to not be able to cover, to not get to the quarterback with 4 rushers, because Dallas, you're not going to expect Dallas's defense to turn around in this short week. They rush the quarterback. They don't do anything else well, and they're an undisciplined team. Rex Ryan says they're playing like hot garbage. I tend to agree with that. But their talent on the field, there's a big gap between these 2 teams.
Well, and that should tell you something, because quite frankly, the Giants should be 2-1 right now. If they had a kicker in week 2, they beat the Commanders, no question. Okay, and obviously they just came off an impressive performance winning at Cleveland. So based on merit, the Giants being at home, you'd think they should be favored, right? So the fact that the Cowboys are a 4.5-point favorite should tell you something about their relative strength between these 2 teams, the relative talent levels. I do think you're hitting on something
including
else.
the Giants' schedule, by the way. Giants were kind of impressive, but couldn't get a touchdown against the Commanders, right? And you know, but they showed the talent gap showed up against Minnesota. It wasn't supposed to be that big a difference between those 2 teams.
Sure, but what I think, look, the one thing we've learned early in this season is that we can't tell anything week to week. Underdogs are doing great against the money line. Unexpected things are happening every week, okay? So I don't know that the result of this game is going to follow any sort of pattern. What I do think is you nailed one portion of the game that should follow a pattern, which is this: the Cowboys' run defense. 557 yards allowed in 3 games, 5.4 yards per carry allowed, just a disaster. And meanwhile, the Giants have a functional offensive line for the first time in like a decade, okay? So if I feel good about
there's surprise in your voice when you say that. It is rather shocking.
I don't know what to do. So
I know, yeah.
If there's one bet I like, then it's taking Devin Singletary's rushing prop over 61.5 yards right now at DraftKings at minus 110. He's averaging over that on the season. He's averaging 4.7 yards a pop. Yes, they're starting to work Tyrone Tracy in a little more. Yes, Daniel Jones will vulture some rushing yards. But I suspect the Giants will look to keep the ball on the ground in this game and exploit that huge hole the Cowboys have shown to the league and keep hammering them on the run until they adjust.
Look, I asked you if there were lines yet on Tyrone Tracy's rushing total, and there are not. I like Singletary. I like, you got to look at the individual bets on guys like Theo Johnson or Malik Neighbors, but Singletary's a good bet to gash this Dallas front, sure.
And you can catch new episodes of the Underdog podcast every Wednesday at 6 p.m. on DKN. Here's a look at the odds to win the NFC East this season. Cowboys are the only team's odds who did not improve from last week to this week, and I mean, that makes sense. Jaden Daniels, though, which I'm sure we'll get into with Marshall in a second here. Impressive Monday night performance moved the Commanders from 14-1, chopped in half, to 7-1, Trey.
All right, let's bring back in Marshall Newhouse again. Played a couple of seasons of his long career here with the Giants on the offensive line out of his collegiate days at TCU. Marshall, I want to get into something that the Underdogs were just talking about, and that is belief, right? If you look at the numbers and you look at the history, okay, with Dak under center, we've lost 12 straight times to the Giants, but they made a good point. They probably should have beaten the Commanders in Week 2 if they had had a kicker. And then they go on the road in Cleveland and really handle their business after a horrendous start. People always look at stats and they look at numbers, but the mental side of this game is just as important. How important is it to believe that we should be 2-1 and we can handle this no matter what happened in the past?
Oh, it's huge. And if you're Brian Daboll, this is what you've been working towards, is establishing a culture of just confidence. Confidence in the guys that you put in the room together, confidence in the guys that are leading you, both in Daniel Jones and guys all over the field, and then ultimately confidence in this system that even though things don't always look perfect, you're kind of slowly trotting along, that you should beat teams like this in the NFL, which in the past, I think there's just been like a doom and gloom a little bit around this Giants program with the two head coach hires before Brian Daboll. So, yeah, I absolutely think that these guys' mindset that they're expecting to win, expecting to play well, goes into this a whole lot.
I think the whole NFC East might have a little bit of confidence heading into the season. We thought this would be top heavy, but that's not really the case, Marshall. And now you throw, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown banged up, Philly not looking great. We just saw Jaden Daniels go off, which I think we'll see a lot more of. What's your take on this division now, and how much has it changed from what you thought it would be preseason?
Yeah, listen, injury luck is a huge thing that we don't talk about enough when it comes to teams and their success. That's from the Chiefs all the way down. The best teams, can get decimated by injuries, and you like to think they can overcome them, but ultimately there's just a limited amount of guys who can make an impact. But I think in this division, it's still Philly. I give the grizzly bear analogy where they don't have to be faster than the bear. They just got to be faster than the slowest person, which I think is the rest of the NFC East. I think they'll slowly figure things out. Nick Sirianni has definitely had a warm, if not hot seat underneath him. But I still believe in the offensive line and Jalen Hurts to get things going. And the A.J. Brown injury doesn't seem to be long-term. You hope that it doesn't turn into a lingering thing. But even with Jaden Daniels coming on, that's one game in a guy's rookie season. I expect high things from him progressively as he goes on, but that was his third game ever in the NFL. And so I still have Philly out front. But, yeah, there's a gap there that could be closed by Washington. But that back end and their defense is still bottom third in the league. I just don't believe in them quite yet. I think it's Phillies to lose.
Well, it certainly feels that way because nobody's repeated in this division since the Eagles won it 4 years in a row, dating back to 2003. It's the longest stretch of any division to not have a repeat champion. The Cowboys, of course, won that division last year when Philly collapsed completely down the stretch. Look, the Cowboys have won 12 regular season games 3 years in a row. They hadn't done that since the 90s when they were winning Super Bowls. But where are we on the belief that this Cowboys team can do something they haven't done in 3 decades, get to a conference championship game?
Listen, I think that there's a level of precedence that we can rely on, that they'll be competitive. But listen, they stood pat all offseason and told us that they had enough in the room to compete, to go get in the playoffs and make a run. And until they show us otherwise, there's no reason to believe that. Just because you pay Dak all that money, all that is more pressure in, call it the highest pressure seat in the NFL, being the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. But again, this defense, I think they'll have a bounce back game. I don't think they're cooked quite yet. And if they give up, 85, 90, rushing yards and a few touchdowns to the Giants tonight, maybe they are cooked. But I don't think they're there quite yet. There's too much talent there right now, even though there are holes that are there. But this Dallas team is just not a complete team. They're not playing complementary football quite yet. You could argue one of their best offensive weapons is Aubrey the kicker so far this season. So, Super Bowl, they're far off from the Super Bowl. It's despite that being their, perennial projection. They've got a long way to go.
Oh, Aubrey's been fantastic. I mean, he hasn't missed a field goal. He kicked a 65-yarder last week against the Ravens, second longest field goal in NFL history. All right, Marshall, get out of here. Go find some beef to eat, will you? Coming up, we'll take a look at who bettors like to find the end zone tonight and take a look at how pivotal these Week 4 games can be. It's all ahead on the Pregame Powerup.
Trey and Claudia back here on the Pregame Powerup. The Jersey score we're going to run through right now.
Nice.
That is the most bet touchdown scores at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. To no surprise, everybody's expecting this to be the breakout game for CeeDee Lamb. Everyone's over on his yards. They are betting him the most to find the end zone at -135. Neighbors not far behind, and that feels like good plus money, people, at +110. Singletary, Ferguson, and Zeke Elliott also on that board. For more on how people are betting tonight, let's go to DKN social media correspondent Megan Townsley.
People are really going for it tonight on Thursday Night Football. I've been scrolling the DraftKings Sportsbook betting groups and, well, Marty Mush from Barstool is betting on Wan'Dale Robinson to be the first touchdown scorer tonight. Really? Wan'Dale Robinson out of all the other options? You can't convince me that's good. I don't believe it. He also picked Jake Ferguson to be the first touchdown scorer, and I can back that a little bit more. You should see people in here are reacting to these bets more than I've ever seen, but let's take it to the Bleacher Report betting group where Ryan Ribeiro is kind of going in the opposite direction. He's taking Malik Neighbors not to score a touchdown. Are we serious? Malik Neighbors, who's been going off and had 2 touchdowns last week? This is what I'm saying. You need to come see what people are betting on in these groups, and to find them, go ahead and open up the DraftKings Sportsbook, click the social tab at the top, and then hit betting groups. Because there is some good stuff in here tonight for Cowboys, Giants, and hey, if you want to tail Wan'Dale Robinson to be the first touchdown scorer, go ahead and be my guest.
Megan, relax on the hate with Wan'Dale Robinson.
Did we all miss on Wan'Dale? Did we all miss on Wan'Dale?
He's the only other receiver to catch a touchdown outside of Malik Neighbors. They have the same targets in the red zone. talk about this offense. You're going to need it to be dynamic. And where the defense is going to go, people, when it gets to the red zone, probably Malik Neighbors. So I actually like the play. I do. Plus 490 at DraftKings as well.
You heard it here.
Right there.
On the pregame power. It's a Wan'Dale Robinson kind of night
Could be,
at
man.
MetLife Stadium. All right, so look, this is an important week, okay? If you start 1-2, we have this historical breakdown. You can use all this data that goes back to 1990 because in the NFL's eyes, that's when the current playoff format began. Yes, we added a 7th seed a couple of years ago, but the format sort of remains the same. So at 1-2, here's a look at how important this game is tonight for these 1-2 teams. Teams that start 2-2 have a 37.3% chance of making the playoffs. 1-3, it goes down to 14%. Now, Dallas started 1-3 or worse twice in the last 22 seasons. Neither time they went on to make the playoffs. So it is
0.4 to win the Super Bowl if you go 1-3.
Well, that's a very interesting number. All right, we take a look at that. This game tonight features 2 of the 3 teams in the Super Bowl era that have actually started 0-2 and went on to win the Super Bowl. The Dallas Cowboys were the first to do it in 1993. They won Super Bowl 27. They beat up on the Bills 52-17. Then Emmitt Smith held out for the first 2 games, and Jerry finally gave him the money, and they came back and won back-to-back Super Bowls. The Giants did it in 2007. In fact, it was a primetime game at MetLife on Monday night in 2007. The Giants started 0-2.
What was the temperature?
47. They had a goal line stand against the then Washington Redskins to stop them from going 0-3. They went on to win the Super Bowl that year, ending the Patriots' perfect run in that season when they went 16-0. And the other team was the 2001 Patriots, who started 0-2. Drew Bledsoe got hurt by Mo Lewis. In comes Tom Brady, and the rest, as they say, is history. So those things are significant. And you look at these numbers tonight. This is going to go. I know it sounds crazy to say this so early in the season. Whoever wins this game tonight is going to go a long way toward challenging the Philadelphia Eagles for the top of this division and the home playoff game that comes with it.
Absolutely. I see this, and just because I think of expectations surrounding the Cowboys over the Giants, really is a must-win. And you see what's coming up. The Steelers, the Lions, the Niners, the Texans.
Yeah.
This is the game you have to win because those ones aren't going to be easy.
And you look at the numbers for Zeke. He's recorded 42.5 rushing yards in all 13 games against the Giants. The current line is 27.5. If he gets over 27.5 and gets going a little bit, this could be another nightmare scenario for the New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys. This, never a nightmare scenario.
Ever.
It's Pregame Powerup. We'll be here every Monday and Thursday all season long on the DraftKings Network. See ya!